Welcome to the On with Shahan podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. A longtime friend, Jack Mula, joins the podcast. He's a former sports agent, former general counsel of the Patriots for 3 championships, and a Waltham legend. Jack, thanks so much for joining.
Well, thanks for having me, Shahan.
Awesome. So, Jack, I obviously know you. CJ is one of my best friends. Your other sons, Ryan and Evan are also super close. But for those that don't know you, I gave a brief background, but I'd love to know, your background, how you got started as an agent, and then what led you to the work that you're doing today.
So the background is mainly just a regular Joe from Waltham here. It's a tight-knit community, Shahan.
Right.
And actually, my start in sports came because of a friend that I grew up with and played high school ball with. That would be Fred Smirlis, who's positioned over my shoulder over there. Fred was a Waltham High wrestler, All-American wrestler, football player, went to Boston College. At that time, we had about 13 players go on to play Division I ball, which was pretty unusual for a New England town. Usually you find that down in California, Florida, or Texas. But we were a tight-knit group. Fred went along to Boston College, was fortunate enough to be drafted by the Bills, Buffalo Bills. And he hired perhaps the preeminent agent at the time, Bob Wolf. Bob Wolf represents Larry Bird, Julius Erving, Larry King, and a number of others. So Fred hired Bob and became an all-pro, I believe, in his second year. And at that time, I think Fred was making about $45,000 in an all-pro. And I believe the NFC nose tackle, the all-pro on the other side, was Leroy Selman at the time, was probably making about $500,000. Far cry from some of today's salaries, but nonetheless, Fred desired a new contract. His agent told him that he doesn't renegotiate, he extends only. So Fred, in his infinite wisdom, said, well, I want someone who'll get me a new contract now. So he actually left Bob Wolf's office, which was located 2 blocks from my law school in Boston, came to my law school, found me in a classroom, and the next day we were on our way to Buffalo. And that began my agent career. It didn't work out well for Fred. It did a year later, but that trip out to Buffalo was an eye-opener. And started the business. I ended up with a number of Boston College players and continued right along until the time that I joined the Patriots, which was in the late 90s. So my 3rd year of law school, I had my first client, and it was wonderful. It was great. The relationships you build with the players are fantastic.
Yeah, and I can attest to the close-knit nature of Waltham and the people there. So him wanting to work with you actually makes a ton of sense, and that's such an interesting story of how you started your career. For those that don't know, actually, I asked you about being a sports agent, and you gave me a lot of the real stories of things, how things go down really. And I think the way that you described it, actually, you didn't scare me away from sports agency, but you painted the picture of exactly what it was, the job with no, rosy colored glasses. And it made me maybe the determination for me that like, maybe this isn't the right path for me. So you were actually a big influence, I think, of nudging me in the right direction of more tech entrepreneurship and all of that. But I know you're a huge influence on others in the Waltham community. So piggyback on that after your sports agent run. How did you get the role with the Patriots? What led you from moving from an agent to a general counsel of the New England Patriots?
It was actually, again, some Boston College players that I was representing. One in particular, Chris Sullivan, defensive lineman. Chris was drafted by the Patriots, so I was negotiating a contract with the Patriots. I had done previous ones with the Patriots. At that time, they were owned by the Sullivan family. This was well before the Crafts had bought the club. So my experience was with a gentleman by the name of Bucko Kilroy.
Hmm.
Bucko Kilroy was an all-pro back in the 40s. He actually played for a team called the Steagles, which was a combination of the Steelers and the Eagles.
Hmm.
A lot of pro players at that time had to serve in the World War, and they didn't have enough to stock the teams, so they actually combined teams. Well, Bucko was he was a colorful player, called by Life magazine the dirtiest player that ever put on a football
Oh my
uniform.
God.
And you had to love this guy because he was in his 70s, 6'2", about 300 pounds. And he was a bear of a man, but he was just a wonderful person. He actually began, along with a gentleman from IBM, the systems that are still used today by at least a few teams, very successful teams, including the Patriots
Hmm.
and the Cowboys, where they use data analytics for scouting. So Bucko and I became friends. Bucko had working with him Bobby Greer, another local gentleman.
Hmm.
Bobby was a director of player personnel who became a general manager. Bobby's son now is the general manager of the Miami Dolphins.
Hmm.
So it was through my relationship doing work on behalf of players that I got to know Bucko and Bobby well. They both survived the transition from the Sullivans, and there was a couple of interim owners to the Crafts. And when I began to negotiate for Chris, I got to know the new owners. And as luck would have it, they were in the midst of trying to arrange a new stadium.
Right.
You recall, Shahan, they almost went to Hartford.
Right.
Can you imagine that? They almost located in Hartford. Not knocking the kids from Hartford, but
Right.
how things may have turned out so differently had they located themselves in Hartford. So I had a background in municipal law. I had worked as a city attorney, permitting, zoning, and whatnot. That combined with the sports work that I've done, representing players,
Right.
they thought it was a perfect combination for what they were doing. So I was more or less recruited by the Kraft family, met them all, and that started my career working in the front office.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I didn't know you did that work with the zoning and all that before your agency work. So yeah, that's a great combination. So you were helping with part of building out Gillette Stadium, and I think it's called Patriots Place around it.
Yeah, it is called Patriot Place. Funny how we got that name because in most cities or towns, there's usually a city engineer or a register or a clerk or someone who will just assign you a name. Well, we didn't have a street. I
Hmm.
mean, it was Route 1 out there. We couldn't call it Route 1 Stadium or Route 1 Place. So we simply went into the clerk's office and said, "Is Patriot Place available?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Well, great. We'd like to reserve it." Now, I did that without any permission from the Crafts or anyone associated with New England. I just felt that it sounded well. So when they came up saying, "What should we call this place?" I said, "Well, it's already registered with the town as Patriot Place." Um, so I took a little initiative and was rewarded, which I learned later on. Usually you got to check yourself when you're working down in Foxborough. Once Bill arrived, things got a whole lot tighter.
Right. Well, I did not know the backstory behind it. That's hilarious. That's breaking news here for all those that didn't know that.
Oh, we had
But
a lot of fun down there. There was a lot of behind the scenes breaking news down there, Shahan, believe me. But yeah, it was the real estate. We had to develop Patriot Place. We actually had to back out of the Hartford stadium situation. And quite honestly and very seriously, there was quite a few hurdles down in Foxborough. I will recall there was actually a manufactured home community
hmm,
down in Foxborough on the grounds that are currently Patriot Place. Now, in Massachusetts, like in many other states, there was a racing track a horse racing track that actually sits where the current stadium is. And that horse racing track was seasonal.
Hmm.
So as a result, a lot of the trainers, the owners of horses, the jockeys, they would come in seasonally and stay on the grounds in manufactured homes.
Wow.
They would then, when it gets winter and the season turns, they would go to places like Bowie, Maryland, and other tracks further down the eastern seaboard. Well, that manufactured home became a year-round community once racing stopped. So we had families and individuals who have been living there for decades that all of a sudden you're uprooting them. And that's, quite emotional and painful to a lot of them. Some have children in the school system. Some actually had ties to the Patriots. Believe it or not, we had a punter who spent 2 years with the Patriots. He took his signing bonus money and he bought a couple of horses. He ended up staying there. So 30 years later, no one knew there was a punter from one of the original Patriot teams living on the grounds.
Wow.
Well, we had to relocate every one of them. It was emotional, difficult, but we got it done. And that cleared the way to allow us to build the new stadium.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, man, so many different stories that you would never know about. And what I find really interesting about your background is that you work with both the business relations as well as athletes, as well as different legal things that you're working on. So after you made your run with the Patriots, talk to us about your career now working with entrepreneurs, different businesses, different CEOs of different companies in various different industries. And the question I really want to ask for you specifically is, do you see parallels between successful athletes and successful business owners?
Well, we'll start in reverse. So to your last question, most definitely. I think there's two things that both need for success. And one is that persistence. It's that grit. It's going forward with something that other people will tell you there's doubt there. Take the safe road. You're risking a lot, but that's what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur faces that fear and dives right in. And I think that's the same with athletes. Professional football in particular is a violent game. To stand down on the sidelines of an NFL game and see 300 plus men smash into each other for 100 plus plays, to see someone run 40 yards across the field and take out another human being who's running the opposite way. There are some violent collisions. And every one of those men, especially those who end up with families and children, they know that they are one hit away from losing their career. So athletes have a heck of a risk. Same with entrepreneurs. So to have that strength, to have that discipline and that grit to continue on, I think it's characteristic of both entrepreneurs and athletes. And the second is the ability to adapt. I think it's pretty easy when you look back at the successful startups who have become unicorns, as well as some of the sports teams that have figured out a way to win and win consistently. And that is due to their ability to adapt and adjust. And I don't mean going in at halftime and drawing different plays on the board saying we're getting our butt kicked up the middle, so we need to spread these guys out and attack at a different location. I mean adapting and advancing in game. I mean making changes and having the guts to throw out the entire game plan and begin again in the middle of the first quarter, right, or the third quarter. Right. And I think an entrepreneur also needs to pivot. He needs to adjust. He needs to first orient himself as to what is the environment around him, observe what's going on, develop alternatives, and then, quite frankly, you need to have the intestinal fortitude to go for it. Make that decision, and don't be afraid of change. Don't listen to the noise. and just go do it. So yeah, it is, businessmen and athletes have a lot in common. As to the beginning um, of your question, uh, quite frankly, the time after being an agent, which was a few decades, spent a decade with New England, I had the ability to change. Fortunately enough, I was in a situation where I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to go to another club. I didn't have to continue to work for someone. So I joined with a couple ex NFL guys and we began consulting for some of the major college programs. And I was often visiting the Alabamas, the LSUs, Georgia, Auburn, meeting some wonderful people, some fantastic players, and got to counsel young men and their decision to enter the professional ranks.
Mm.
And that was tremendously rewarding, both as a business, but also personally, to be able to share what I had with some of the college players coming out to join the NFL.
And what were some of the things you would talk to them about, like, you know, predator type nature of different people working with them, knowing how to manage finances and fame? Was it along those lines, Jack, or was there other things you were
It was
talking about?
probably more nuts and bolts, Shahan, in that we kind of laid out a timetable for them. Those freshmen and sophomores, quite honestly, we told them to concentrate on their academics and the athletics, and they needed to compartmentalize that. But once you became a junior or a senior, and you had the talent, and you saw that you could play in the NFL, you had that at least opinion of yourself, we then could get them a little closer
Mm.
by identifying what NFL clubs are looking for. We actually would go over scouting reports. We would talk to them about certainly the physical characteristics and traits that are needed for the NFL. But you're right, we also went into the mental part of scouting. Um, People would think that because of the success of the combine and what's on TV now and the content that's created and the tremendous athletic ability that today's pro athletes have, that that's enough. Um, while they can separate themselves because of their physical ability, there's a lot of people who are big, fast, strong, mean. Um, there's not a whole lot of people who can combine that with the mental discipline, the mental toughness, and that's what separates a lot of the fantastic athletes and tremendous physical specimens from people having a 10-year career or 1-year career. So
Mm.
we would show them an actual scouting report, and they were just astonished to learn that in an average report of 3 pages, 2 pages are about the person, are
Mm.
about his work habits, about his ability to learn, adapt and adjust, the discipline that he exercised during his high school and college days. Yes, we had the boxes for how many times you can bench press 225 pounds or how fast you can run a 40-yard dash. But when they saw that this was an actual scouting report and how much was learned off the field, a lot of them had their eyes opened. And we were happy to do it. I'm surprised it wasn't done before. But I continued doing that for 5 years and absolutely loved it. And that business continues today.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's very much needed, not just for athletes, for entrepreneurs too. All the things that you were talking about. You know, it's not just the business, but it's the person behind that, making sure that you have the mental strength and you have the right goals in mind, and nothing is going to stop you from getting to all of those things, no matter what is going on, a coronavirus, a pandemic, different business shutting down. So speaking of pivoting and adjusting, one of the things I've been watching, I think it's a terrible product, the NBA bubble and the product that's being put out now. With that being said, I'd rather have it than not have it. But what are your thoughts on the NBA bubble? Is this sustainable? Do you think if this goes on to next year, they'll cancel the season? What are others, you know, sports like the NFL doing? Do you have like overall thoughts? And then if you want to touch on anything specifically, I just want to get your thoughts as a professional.
Well, specifically, the NBA bubble, I mean, let's face it, professional sports lifeblood is the revenue that comes in from media contracts, the gates, sponsorship, not unlike college sports. College sports, of course, is driven by really 2 things: the football revenue, as well as the NCAA basketball tournament. But the NBA needs revenue to continue. I mean, the salaries that are paid to the athletes are, I don't think you can afford that just because you're an owner with a heck of a lot of money. You can't afford that over a couple of years. You can't sustain those losses.
Hmm.
And while the values of franchise have risen, it's pretty clear. It's the day-to-day work. So without having the sport, if they were all of a sudden to shut down, I don't think the NBA would go away, but there would be some financial pain, and that would be spread around to a lot of people. And we usually just think of the owners, the league, and the players. Well, there are a whole lot of people who make their living in professional sports working in the venues. There's a whole lot of people who are ticket takers, people who deal in concessions, people who deal in maintenance, people in security. There's a lot of people besides just the athletes and the coaches and the owners in those buildings, amounting to, hundreds of people, and in some instances, thousands.
Right.
So the attempt to put it on, coupled with an absolute regard for safety, which is the bubble, I think is the only way to do it. So I applaud the NBA
Right.
for trying to put things as back to normal as they can. But that's a process also, and they've adapted and adjusted. I don't think the NBA, as opposed to, say, Major League Baseball, where they're having so many problems, they're unable to control some of the athletes and what they're doing.
Hmm.
Quite frankly, Shahan, I look at what's happening in baseball. Again, when you're in the NBA, you've got 15 players on a team. When you're in baseball, you've got 30.
Right.
Now, when you're in college football, you've got 90, 100,
Jeez.
18 to 22-year-olds. So if we can take anything from what pro sports is doing, I think we need to have a much higher regard for the sons and daughters who are 18 to 20, 22 years old, who, like the pro teams, actually supply the labor and the entertainment for college sports.
Hmm.
I'm a little concerned about where that's leading. There's a movement afoot by Pac-12 athletes, student athletes, and those from across the country, as well as some parents, to have a higher regard and asking the NCAA, the athletic department, conferences, to have a higher regard for the safety of the athletes. I applaud that, quite frankly. The pro teams obviously have more money to put into testing and tracing and sanitization. You can lock people away in a hotel. I read this morning the Saints have booked a hotel in downtown New Orleans so the player and their families can take up that entire hotel. I think they've booked half of the hotel while training camp is open.
Wow.
They can do that because of the money. In colleges, that revenue comes from TV and comes from the gate, and a little comes from donors and the school student fees and whatnot. I don't know how they're going to go about and replace that, quite frankly. And I think, erring on the side of caution, I believe that we'll probably see many cancellations of fall sports, including football, unfortunately. As much as I love it and I've been able to work at it and I'm a great fan of it, I just don't see football, college football, continuing this fall.
Yeah, and the point you made, I mean, you made a lot of good points there, but the one specifically about, college athletes not having the protections or the resources to do proper testing, like you were saying, or isolate themselves. On top of that, they're not getting paid. I mean, that's a huge concern that, even as football fans, we need to take into consideration. And I think based upon that, yeah, it's a high risk that this is going to come back in the fall or anytime soon for that matter, until some safety precautions are in place. With that being said, The Rock recently, let me just see what the article said, at least the thumbnail. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson investor group agree to buy the XFL. Do you think that The Rock is looking into the future kind of and saying the NFL's in a lot of trouble And if I can buy this on the pennies on the dollar, then maybe I can set myself up for something when we figure this out in the future. I mean, what do you think about his play? He does have some connections to the WWE when he was there, so this is an interesting acquisition.
Yeah, well, first, quite frankly, the NFL is not in trouble. Okay.
Okay.
The NFL is looking towards new media rights deals, which will probably see a 50% increase.
Oh, okay.
The NFL may be playing games without fans this fall,
Hmm.
and they're certainly going to attempt, and who knows where that goes. You can't put the NFL in a bubble, unlike Major League. Well, Major League Baseball is not really in a bubble. It's really NBA and the NHL.
Hmm.
PGA is outside. It's singular. It's a singular competition. The NFL is a lot different. Um, so I don't think the NFL is in trouble, other than the fact that that amount of revenue that will come in from the gate will certainly affect them, and it affects the salary cap.
Hmm.
Fortunately, both the management, owners have negotiated a new deal, and I believe the ink is dried today with modifications to the collective bargaining agreement to spread out the effects of the cap. Without fans, you're going to have clubs losing 70, $80 million. And that's a pretty hard hit. Now, that's 70, 80 million that'll eventually have to come off the cap. And you couldn't sustain that of 1 year. Where the cap's 200 million, if all of a sudden it's to drop by 70 million. So they got together, the owners and the union, and they've worked out a compromise to spread that over the next few years. The Rock buying the XFL, I absolutely love it.
Yes.
Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia, his former wife, along with Jerry Cardinale, have purchased the XFL. Actually, the purchase hasn't closed.
Okay.
And there are some legal mechanisms that are being undertaken by a creditors group that may actually delay or actually put an end to the Rock's bid. I believe there's a hearing on Friday to hear the creditors group. They believe that there's assets there that they need to not have transferred to the buyers for the $15 million price. It's always money, right, Shahan?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that The Rock has jumped in, I love it. He is an entertainer. He loves football. Former college player at University of Miami, former Canadian Football League player. Obviously a tremendous success on the big screen. Those who know him say he is just an all-around gentleman. His ex-wife, Danny Garcia, what she's been able to do in her entertainment career. She's also a professional bodybuilder. I think it's fantastic that both of them are involved. Jerry Cardinale is a former Rhodes Scholar and Harvard Business School graduate who's extremely successful. I think those three together, along with perhaps some new blood, I believe the XFL can certainly be a supplement to pro football. There's no way it's replacing the NFL, and I think the owners would tell you that. But I think there's a market. I think the American appetite for American football is insatiable. And if the season is canceled in college and you've got no fans playing in the NFL, the players not playing in front of any fans, I think you're going to have one heck of a spring. So they've got a heck of a task to pull that off. If they do it, wouldn't surprise me. The Rock has been in worse situations before and pulled things out. So let's hope that he's got some magic left.
Yeah, I think you're totally spot on with The Rock. I mean, anywhere The Rock goes, there's going to be a lot of energy, enthusiasm. It's going to bring good attention back to the sport. I think it's good for the overall sport. And like you said, with the gap in potential college sports going away or the fans, there's going to be a lot of attention that can go towards this direction. So in some like parting words for advice for entrepreneurs or new athletes, do you have any advice? Like you mentioned a lot of the characteristics of what you see differentiates good athletes or good entrepreneurs from those who are not as good. But do you have any advice for those who are maybe starting on the journey or or at a path in their life where they need to level up. Do you have some like parting advice for people of maybe how to approach this?
Yes, most certainly. I will think back to where my sports career began. It was because of over here. It's because of Fred. Okay, let's bring Fred into the picture. Okay,
What's up, Fred?
this is Fred Waltham's Fred Smirlis. Okay, All American, All Pro, Hall of Fame nominee. I'll tell you a story about Fred. When we were graduating high school, we put together a summer league basketball team. And back then in the 70s, it was quite competitive. Um, you had players come from all over the Boston area and participated in a lot of summer leagues. Well, we were just a bunch of football players who would go and play basketball after we lifted weights.
Hmm.
So complicating the fact that none of us were basketball players, we all were just showing up with um, our muscles stiff as could be. And they told us we all need shirts. Well, everyone was sponsored by local businesses. So Fred said he'd take care of the shirts. So he went out and purchased shirts for all of us, handed them out. And on the back of every shirt, it said, "We think we can."
Hmm.
Now, we knew we were going to get our butts kicked. We knew perhaps we'd lose every game. But Fred, and what drove Fred was that in order to succeed in anything you do, you must first believe that you can.
Hmm.
There are doubters everywhere. There's noise everywhere. There are those who have an unyielding regard for enjoying success of others. Those are the people you need to surround yourselves with, and you need to shoo away those people who, believe it or not, may actually be rooting for you to fail.
Hmm.
Instead of thinking of failure as something to stay away from, we knew we were going to fail. Accept failure. Don't fear it. It's going to happen, but it's only going to make you stronger. And if you don't think you can succeed, you won't succeed.
Hmm.
So whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. We knew what we were doing there. It was supplementing our training for football. We weren't there to win games. So know where you're at, know where you're going, set a goal, go after it. Don't listen to the naysayers. And when someone throws a brick wall in front of you and you fail, go around the damn thing or run right through it, whatever you choose to do. But don't listen to those naysayers. They're there, they're everywhere. Don't listen to them, stay focused. And you know what? You will get to where you're going.
Those are wise, wise words from Jack Mula. Jack, how do we follow you and the activity that you're doing? Is there a website or LinkedIn, or what's the best way to follow your activities?
Well, both Ryan, CJ, and Evan told me to stay off social media.
Okay. Never mind.
I was on Twitter. I'm no longer. I have a LinkedIn, and I'll post every now and then, and I'll get calls from them saying, "What the heck did you do that for?" But I try to stay behind the scenes. I guess I'm rather the guy that likes to prop up the Fluties and the Bradys and the others. I like to be part of a team, quite honestly. Don't enjoy the spotlight on me.
Hmm.
Being part of a team is something I was since I played Pop Warner when I was 7 years old for Sergeant Major James Falzone.
Hmm.
And I enjoy that. So I do look forward to helping teams succeed. I have been coaching individuals, mentoring some young men. I had one gentleman who made it all the way to the commissioner's office.
Wow.
A nice young man from Belmont, Mass, who's now the commissioner of the PGA, Jay Monahan. I
Wow.
love that, but I choose to stay behind the scenes, try to prop up the Generation Z, the millennials, and those younger. I think us old people, you know, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, we still got a whole lot left. And I'd like to see a lot of us, including myself, be able to give back more. So you'll find me on LinkedIn every now and then. After that, I'm usually disappearing.
Okay, got it. And I totally hear you on that. I think you're saying the us older gentlemen or us older generation, I think we need a lot of your wisdom. So I really, really appreciate you coming on here.
You're not
Obviously,
old, Shahan. You're
no,
not
I'm
old.
not old. I was talking about you. I mean, I'm a young guy over here. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I'm connecting with your sons later this week too. Although Ryan pushed my meeting for golfing on Wednesday morning, so I'll be giving him some shit for that. But other than that, thank you so much, Jack, for joining the podcast, and we'll make sure to distribute this on all the channels tonight.
And thank you for putting my silhouette behind you. Thank you,
Okay.
Shahan.
Thank you. We have the same nose. Thanks, Jack. See
Take
you,
care.
man.
Bye-bye.